Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Wait till a little bit as people come through before I get started. But welcome to Curiosity Corner Live. My name is Kayleen. Happy to be with you this Friday morning. I'm going to wait a little bit before we get really going. See if some people come in. Hope you guys are excited because today we're going to be talking about the brain. Beautiful thing up here. Good morning, Anthony. Good morning. If you just missed what I said, we're going to be talking about this beautiful thing up here called the brain. Sure, you're super familiar with it. It's a very awesome organ. We're going to just wait a little bit to get going, but we'll be starting soon. But thanks for joining us a little early. All right, so I'm going to get started. So, hey, my name is Kayleen, and I'm a guest engagement specialist at the Great Lakes Science Center. We're here bringing you these live streams every day at 10:30 in the morning, every day. And yesterday, I hope you were able to catch it, but we had math art with Andy. And next week, we have something very special that I'll talk about soon. But today, we're focusing on a beautiful organ that I love so much, the brain. So this beautiful, beautiful thing up here is protected, not only by the skull, right? But it does so many important things that it needs protection. Before I talk about the important things that the brain does, I want to talk about the thing that protects it, which is cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, so I have this container with an egg and just some water, but pretend this is the skull minus the little splash you just seen. Okay, so the water in here is going to act like a cerebral spinal fluid, and when I shake up our brain, the egg in here, super hard, our egg doesn't even crack. But that happens because water acts as almost a barrier, a liquid barrier. So it is able to slow down that movement that the brain would have if we decide to move around just a little bit, so that if it bumps against sides and edges, it doesn't crack as easy, which is super important because our brain has such amazing functions. It's what makes you you. It's what helps you breathe. It's a main source of a reason why we're able to function, our body's able to function. So let's talk about some of the reasons why our brain is so important. One of the parts of our brain that we'll be talking about, and it's made up of three main parts that we're talking about. And this is why we want to talk about these parts, because one of the biggest things that I've always heard is that we only use 10% of our brains. But if I look at this picture here, and we talk about these parts, it seems like we use a little bit more than what we may used to think. So one of the first parts I'm going to talk about is the cerebellum. So I have this part right here. The cerebellum is all a part of our muscle movements, our balance, and posture. So my ability to stand up straight is the reason why I can tell my cerebellum is at work. I can also do a little something like just moving around. I know that it's helping with my balance. If I was walking back and forth, moving all over, I would know my cerebellum might be a little out of whack. But that cerebellum is super duper important because it's right connected to that. It's right connected to the brain stem. Brain stem is a super important organ because our brain interprets a lot of really complex messages from the outside, from our bodies, from different parts of our bodies. So our brain stem helps our brain interpret that message. One of the parts that connects to our spinal cord, which is part of our nervous system, which helps brings us messages. It also helps with our automatic bodily functions. So breathe in, breathe out. That's one of the ways that I can test my automatic bodily functions. That wasn't so automatic, but I know when I'm talking and breathing, I'm not thinking about it. But that's my brainstem at work. If I hold my fingers here, I'm able to feel a little bit of a flick from my neck. That's my heartbeat. It's pulsing. My heart pumps blood throughout my entire body. So some parts of my body, even on this little part of my wrist here, shout out to Ohio, you can feel little pulses from your heart. And that brainstem is helping you to be able to interpret and to be able to keep doing that throughout the day without even thinking about it. So that's a pretty awesome part of our brain to have. Now, one thing you can test, if you can't feel it as much, try running around in pace with me. We're going to test both of these parts of our bodies at the same time. So if I run in place, that takes a lot of balance. And running in place also uses a lot of my heartbeat. So I run super duper fast for a little bit. I get my blood pumping. I get my pulse going. And now I'm going to take my 2 fingers, bring it back up here to the top of my neck. And then I'm going to see if those pulses keep coming. And for me, those pulses are going a lot faster than they were before when I was just standing still. Reason that is that blood is pumping a lot more because I was moving so much. Now that was an awesome way for those 2 parts of that brain to work together. But trust me, I'm using a lot more. And we're going to be talking about that. Come down to my office. We're going to be talking a little bit. I got this diagram for you. Good morning, Isaac. Happy to be joining. Happy that you joined us for this conversation about the brain. One of my favorite organs in the body. So I'm just slowing down my heart rate here. Gotta sit down. Not the best thing to do, but best way to teach for you guys right now. So we talked about 3 parts of the brain. We just used 2 of them at the same time. Crazy things. But we're going to talk about another thing that I'm using also. My cerebrum. It's the biggest part of my brain. I'm going to show you on this picture. So we have your cerebellum coming down right here. This is going to be your brain stem connected to that spinal cord I was telling you about. Then your cerebellum, your cerebrum, your cerebral cortex, some people call it, this area right here is a very important part of the brain. It talks about these different lobes here that is an important part of your personality, the way you're able to see some of the things that you sense, able to interpret these messages. It's a very important part of the brain. It's the reason why I believe you use way more than 10%, especially more at one time. So let's look at that. I'm going to bring you just a little bit closer, and we bring some of these things to you too. So like I said, our cerebrum, the largest part of our brain here, is a part of the thinking, the memory, and the reasoning that we all hold within our brain here. It's the reason why we have to keep this thing up here, this organ up here so protected, and we have to keep working on it. These lobes need help in development. So let's talk about one of my favorite parts, the frontal lobe. It brings you your personality, if you develop it, your problem solving, and your feelings. These are all things you need to develop, right? So personality, let me think of something. My favorite animal. You guys can think of something like your favorite animal too. Go ahead and share with me. Well, I'll share mine. My favorite animal is the elephant. It actually taught me one of my favorite things I've ever learned was the matriarch. It's a beautiful thing that I've learned. I was able to see also within my family. So I love to be able to see a matriarch is something that the oldest woman in the family kind of helps with monitoring the behaviors and taking care of the rest of the herd that is a part as a part of that herd. So they help with the decisions, help with the hunting, and they also help with the care. And that is definitely shown within my mother and my grandmother. And they also helped with helping the other people in my family to be better themselves, and especially me. So thank you to elephants. And thank you for the beautiful women in my family, that beautiful matriarch that we have here. That frontal lobe, that personality, all part of me, that problem solving. The frontal lobe is the reason why it brings so much out of me. I know I use that part of my brain a lot when I try to make decisions, especially with the problem solving. My parietal lobe is very important because it helps me interpret communication. This needs a lot of work too, because there's so many languages out there. It's pretty easy for us to communicate because maybe if you're here, oh, Isaac, you love, not Isaac. Anthony loves the rhino. That's a beautiful one too. I used to love rhinos. Still do. I was gonna say this parietal lobe right here is very important for interpreting the communication. So the fact that I'm able to read, the fact that you love rhinos, and we're able to have a little bit of a conversation about those mega herbivores, beautiful mega herbivores. It's the reason why we're able to have a little bit of a conversation and communicate. Also, if you were able to touch a rhino, that some people believe that will help you to be able to communicate better with that animal. But who knows? But for us, touch is one way we're able to sense and communicate things around the world. I was able to tell my heartbeat was a little bit different when I touched the top of my neck. So I'm always able to regulate my heartbeat with my touch. So think about something like that. Your temporal lobe, very important for the memory and also for the hearing. So that's another part of communication. So that's why hearing it makes it a lot easier, right? But some people can't, some people are not able to hear, but they're still able to use this temporal lobe for memory. And they're still able to develop that memory in that part of their brain, even if hearing in other ways. Like I said, touch, it's another way we can hear, listen to parts of our body. Even other parts of the world, even other species and things like that. The occipital lobe is an important part of the brain that we've seen for vision. So all the different colors you're able to see, and many people interpret different colors. You ever heard of things like color blindness and things like that? People interpret the world so different. And even other species too, right? So these different parts of our brains can even look different between even different other individuals, and using different parts of our brains is definitely, we definitely use more than just 10%. Because let's look at this picture once again, now that we know the different parts and what they can do. That huge part of our brain made up some of the most important functions to how we're able to talk and communicate with one another. That's definitely a lot more than just 10% of this entire figure. Definitely more than 10% of our brain. If I even go into more, these different, let me go into more of these different parts here. So this kind of breaks up what I talk to you guys about a lot better. Doesn't show, the colors don't represent as well, but this is a major part of our brain. The cerebrum cortex and the cerebrum in general. That frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe. All these lobes here are very important to our personality, interpretation of the world, and even interpretation of our own senses, the things that we sense around the world. That brainstem is able to help us interpret it, because it's so connected to our spinal cord, which is attached to our nervous system. It's a part of our nervous system, right? And down here in the cerebellum, it all helps with some of the more automatic functions. Well, what we presume as more automatic, which is our posture, our more bodily movements and things like that. They're things that we could work on, but they're more automatic. We use less thinking of that than we know. But we should develop it more so that we can have better posture. If we develop it, it grows bigger, right? It's just like a muscle. If you do something like a push-up, something like this over time, for different individuals can be very hard. But if you work on it, it gets bigger. Muscles can get bigger. The ability to retain that body's information to do something like that remains in that muscle as long as you develop it. And if you keep training, you can keep developing more than just 10%. That's the myth that we're trying to break today. So I hope you understand how beautiful your brain is, how you can definitely use more than just 10% of your brain, and that it's important to protect it. Because trust me, that cerebrospinal fluid is definitely better than water. And if you can make a splash zone, you can protect it. And I skateboard and things like that with a helmet. Trust me, it works. So do anything you can to protect and develop your brain. Thank you so much for staying curious with us this Friday. And most importantly, make sure you join us next week. It's going to be one of the best weeks in the world. We're celebrating Apollo 11. It was to walk on the moon. And the entire week we have all themes on outer space. So I hope you guys can check it with us. When we talking about eclipses on Friday, make sure you join us, okay? Apollo 11. Stay curious with us. Come visit with us at the museum. And remember, 10:30 next week, okay? 10:30 in the morning. See you next time. Bye.